welcome back to the Super Centex Podcast with Chad Conine and DJ Ramirez. DJ is enjoying the fall temperatures, correct?
Yes. I walked out of my apartment this morning. I was having a bad morning because I woke up with neck pain. I just slept funny.
Wait till you get our age.
Yeah. And as soon as I walked outside, I was like, oh my gosh, my day's going to be so much better now.
Yep. I've got a walk to the gym and a trip to the driving range on the docket today. So
nice.
I'm going to get out.
Nice. All right. Well, so in the history of classic football rants, one of my all-time favorites came from former Arizona Cardinals coach Dennis Green after a game against the Chicago Bears. And Dennis Green, so I don't have a Cardinals hat, but I'll just put on this red hat here. He said, "The Bears are who we thought they were. You want to cry them? Put on their butts. But they are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook." How's that?
Did you look that up on YouTube today just to get it precisely right?
To get the beats, you know? So in the spirit of they are who we thought they were, we had a lot of interesting matchups last week, I thought. Who were some of the teams that kind of proved to you that they are who we thought they were? And maybe on the flip side, did anyone surprise you?
Go ahead, DJ.
I don't know, because I feel like we already kind of had an idea of what several teams were going to look like when they started district. I mean, La Vega was La Vega. Robinson was Robinson.
I feel like your game. Yeah. I feel like with your game, with La Vega coming off a loss to Stephenville and then the bye week, I feel like them pretty much holding serve and beating Gatesville by double digits. I think that kind of showed they are who we thought they were. Even though, I mean, I think probably La Vega is probably deserving of a top 10 ranking in the state, but I mean, they're not going to rank a team that's 3-3, right? So.
Yeah, I do want to say that Fairfield has surprised me a little bit this season. I feel like they're doing really well. We haven't really talked about them a lot. And I think we can definitely talk about them more later on in the podcast, but like them and then Mejia coming out and bringing the goat. Obviously, that's a really emotional win. And, like that meant a lot to them after what they've been going through the past couple weeks. So, yeah, but I mean, I'm not really surprised Conine beat China Spring. They've been having the same issues that they've had in non-district of just like mostly beating themselves, and they've got some other things going on with injuries and like young kids on spots that they haven't been before. But I didn't realize Rudder was as good as they were, even though they were undefeated going into this matchup. I really thought, University was going to pull off the upset again, like they did with Lampasas. But I think, they were also coming off a bye week, and after, trying to get some people healthy. So, I mean, I feel like for the most part, most teams are looking the way that we thought they were going to look at this point in the season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I had Fairfield on my list of surprises. I think their win over TIG was the most convincing win they've had so far this year. And then Midway is a surprise. I picked Midway to lose 2 weeks in a row. I picked Midway to lose against Shoemaker and then against Temple, and they proved me wrong both times. So that, to me, they got to be a surprise. If we're talking about we are who they thought they were in non-district, I think Robinson, really did a good job of showing up in a potential rivalry game and a potential, okay, what have you really got type of thing, and beat up on Lorena. So Robinson looking more and more like a team that deserves to be ranked in the state.
You both mentioned Fairfield, and as DJ alluded to, we may talk about them more later, but I agree with you guys that the Eagles have, real quietly, you know, been putting together a great season. I mean, the Teague win, as Chad said, was a big one. Um, you know, Chad referenced the Midway game, and obviously I rehashed it on the After Dark pod. But the more I think about that game, first of all, it was just an incredible game. It was one of the best I'll see all year. I know that, and so much went wrong for Midway in that game. And when you can win a game like that, um, that really says something about your team, I think, because that game was right there for Temple to take it, and Temple is good. Like they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and I mean they're obviously again I broke it down the other night, but they're about to ice the game from the 1 yard line, and Midway comes up with the goal line stand of the year, stops them on consecutive plays. Now they've got to drive 98 yards for the winning touchdown, and they do it. And like, obviously, Lathan Wissington is a friggin' stud. I mean, he's just really, really good. But Cash Pullen stepped up. There was a huge third down pass that he made that was as good as any throw I've seen all year. Um, and yeah, I mean, Temple had 2 touchdowns called back in the first half due to penalties. Um, so Midway just persevered, and that to me was a big one. I don't think that the Panthers lose again this regular season. They've got Colleen at Bryan and home to Cove. They should beat all three of those teams. And if Temple can step up and beat Harker Heights, which is certainly within the realm of possibility, Midway had a chance to beat Heights if it could have just gotten out of its own way. um, there's a very real chance that Midway could be co-district champions again. So, all right. So I would say in the 21st century, there has been no more consistently good rivalry in Central Texas than China Spring and La Vega. Just, banger after banger. Um, we've said repeatedly this year that the Pirates are certainly the favorites in 12-4A. But is there any hey, it's a rivalry game and anything can happen? I mean, is that a thing for this week? What do y'all think?
I don't really think
a lot would have to go wrong for La Vega.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I think
a lot would have to go wrong for La Vega to lose.
Yeah, I think, but I also
Sorry,
think
ahead,
that
Jack.
this is a rivalry built on both teams being good,
right?
And those matchups, and so I think it's not like one that goes back 50 years like Texas or whatever, however long Texas OU goes back. Baylor Texas Tech, Matt, their 80th meeting this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not this thing of a lot of history and we want to beat those guys because our grandfathers played them and wanted to beat them or something like that, It's just it's a matchup of really good teams, and they've been in a district together, and I just I don't feel like it's an even match this time around, and as evidenced by the fact that La Vega goes to Brownwood and beats up on them one week, and then Brownwood comes to China Spring and wins,
Right,
so.
right. Yeah, DJ, you like Chad have seen both teams, and I mean you don't see it happening, do you? A China Spring upset.
Like I said, a lot would have to go wrong for La Vega to lose that game. In China Spring this year, it's not like they're rebuilding. It's more like they're trying to figure out who they are, um, in the sense of they don't have the level of talent that they used to have, right? They don't have the X lines or the Cash McCollums or the Kyle
Yeah,
Bartons.
that
And
was kind of our story coming into the season was, the who were the stars for China Spring, and
yeah.
we kind of thought that some might step up, and I would say, Matthew Battles is an emerging star, but
Mhm.
not quite there yet. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think, like, for example, and I wrote this in my column the other day, they're fighting Connolly in the fourth quarter, and Matthew Battles has played a lot of fourth quarters for China Spring, but fourth quarters in which they were leading by like 40, 50 points, right? Like they've never had to really be in this situation where they're in the regular season and they're fighting back in the fourth quarter, and having to make a stand, having to, really grit for it. I would argue maybe there were a few games, maybe like Melissa last year, or even that championship game 2 years ago where, they had to come back and win it by a field goal. But like those were different teams. They were in different mindsets. It was a different level of competition. Um,
yeah,
and
and the
I
other
mean,
thing is, I don't know anything about China Spring's kicking situation, but it was always nice when you could get in a close game and then, oh, hey, Thomas Barr, go win the game for us, Mr.
yeah,
Automatic, remember him?
It's also
yeah.
nice
And I
when you
mean,
could block a field goal and run it back for a touchdown.
True.
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing,
Um,
the La Vega's, two-headed monster at quarterback. I don't know that it gives me cause for concern for them, but like I've seen them with Javen Hernandez be pretty good, but Courtney Parr has emerged as their leading passer. So it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see how that
I
plays
only
out
saw
for the year.
Javen only played maybe 2 or 3 snaps in that Gatesville game, and it's really in situations where you got to have a guy that's not afraid to go for it on the ground. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Courtney Parr is still figuring that part of the game out,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that they have a lot of trust in like his instinct in the passing game. I mean, that was really their biggest strength on Friday, and Coach Hyde was like, "Yeah, like we're trying to figure some stuff out in the running game, but our passing game was good." So,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
Well,
they would love to have a second rusher because it feels to me, and I may be totally wrong about this, but it feels to me like they're saying to themselves, we're going to play hopefully 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 games, and we don't want to wear Bryson rolling out because he's only carried 97 times in the first, 6 games. So,
yeah, that's a good point. The old adage, of course, is if you have two starting quarterbacks, you don't have any. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I do think that they probably need to settle on one, and maybe it's Courtney Parr. Like DJ said, it sounds like he certainly got the responsibility last week. So let's move on. 2 years ago, University and Belton in a Week 11 matchup. I think both of y'all were there. Played an epic game for the district championship at Waco ISD Stadium. The Tigers pulled out a 31-29 victory. Last year it was Belton taking a 24-14 win down at Tiger Stadium. So surely University breaks through and get its revenge this week, right? I mean, and then to go along with that, just how much do they need a bounce back performance after that Rudder game?
yeah, I feel like they definitely want to get back in the one column. I mean, that's talking to Karen Johnson yesterday, and they're they were coming off a big win against Line Passes into a bye week, right? Where they're like two major stars in London Smith, Kate Bynum were, at least receiving wise, they were on the sideline because they'd gotten hurt, and obviously London came back and had a great game against Rudder. Um, but you're kind of in that headspace of like, oh, like we kind of got this in the bag, and it is what I got the sense of Coach Johnson. I think they're just trying to get their head back straight, playing, they want to play a complete game. I feel like this is a good opportunity against Belton. I don't think it has the sizzle that it's had in previous years, partially because the Tigers just haven't had a good year this year.
Yeah.
And you yeah, so I feel like for University at this point, they're not really thinking too much of like, oh, we gotta beat Belton. It's more of like we have to get ourselves right. No,
Yeah.
we have to get ourselves straight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what good teams do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think they need to be thinking revenge a little bit because you can't just go, okay, they're 0-6, no big deal.
Certainly.
You need to have a little bit of extra oomph in what you're doing. And I think revenge from the last 2 seasons would probably be a good tool for them this week because, they started out 3-0, looked good, beating China Spring. And they've been hit or miss. I actually got that Rudder game last week. I just didn't think they were ready to go in and beat an undefeated team. And now they've got Belton and Waco High in back-to-back weeks. So yeah, they really need to get it right mentally, and mojo wise, because then they got a top 10 opponent in Brenham on November 1st.
Yeah, and Brenham has a running back that is being recruited by everyone who's just a sophomore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and is putting up like legit 250 yards a game. I mean, he's just insane. So, Belton is clearly in a rebuilding year. I think they've got a lot of youth. The Tigers do. I think they're relying on a lot of underclassmen. Um, you know, to paraphrase another classic rant, this one by Rick Pitino, Ty Brown's not walking through that door. I mean, that was Rick Pitino saying like, Larry Bird's not walking through that door, when he was coaching the Celtics. So yeah, they don't have the same level of talent. Belton doesn't. That said, I agree with you, Chad. Like, I think University should look at that sort of revenge motivation as a factor, just because you don't want to overlook anyone. And here's the thing. So I found this really interesting. We do those preseason questionnaires, right, that we give the kids on photo day. And one of the questions we asked was like, who's your school's biggest rival? And I found it really interesting that the Belton kids had University as theirs, not Lake Belton, not Temple. Temple Belton's a matchup that's been around a lot longer than like Belton University, but I think it's because of the games the last couple years and how much they've meant, and they were the last two were week 11, and really decisive in the district championship. So, yeah, like I don't know if University looks at Belton as its biggest rival, but certainly they should go in going, it's time to get these guys, that should be a thing. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, talking to the Trojans earlier in the season, that does feel like the vibe. Like at photo day, or when I went in to do the feature, they were all like, we want revenge on Belton, but obviously that was week 1, like preseason, and so. But I do agree that they want to get that swag back, and these next 2 games are going to be a big opportunity for that.
Hey, you got to use something like the Red Raiders this week. They got a mediocre Baylor team coming in, and they need something. So when Mike Jones pops out there and says that, it's really not that loud at Jones Stadium in Lubbock, that's fine. That's fine. And honestly, Mike Jones ought to know something about stadiums that aren't very loud because he plays his home games in one.
Who's Mike Jones?
Oh, wait, who is the linebacker?
Oh,
linebacker that was available.
Are you talking about Matt Jones?
Matt Jones. Okay, yeah.
I was sitting there going, "Who's Mike Jones?"
Yeah, the famous Matt Jones. I'm sorry, I should get his name right. He's so good.
Oh, look at the Texas Tech fan coming out. Look,
but I'm just saying you got to use something, and he might have given the Red Raiders a little.
He might have. Yeah, let's not get too deep in the weeds on that matchup. We'll save that for One True Pod.
Which y'all didn't invite me on. I gotta get my licks in here.
I should have invited you. You could have joined Gary Don Williams with us. That was a lot of fun.
it's hard to match Gary Don's energy. So,
indeed. So helmet stickers are earned here on the Super Centex pod, assuming we were actually giving them out. Uh, but we also want to make sure that we're paying attention. Like, so there are some teams out there, we alluded to a couple earlier, that are quietly, putting together really good seasons, and maybe we haven't talked about them as much. So who are some of those teams that you would say are flying under the radar?
Well, again, I think this is what we were talking about when we talked about, we'll probably mention Fairfield again later in the podcast. And I think that's definitely one. I tell you who I kind of like, and they got a big game this week, is the Bremond Tigers. I saw them play Mart. They got some kind of like big playmakers, not like, guys that can make big plays, like, 80-yard touchdowns, but also like some guys with good size for 2A D2. And they play Goldthwaite this week. The winner of that game, and then Goldthwaite has to be motivated there, because if they beat Bremont, then they could potentially play Mart for the district championship on the last week of the season. So I like the Bremont Tigers in this respect. And another team with a big game this week is the Axel Longhorns. They now they're to 22 consecutive regular season wins. They go up and play Italy. And that is a district championship game, I feel like, too.
DJ?
We talked about Fairfield. And I really like, they're full of veterans. They got a really good quarterback, and their defense is kind of insane, like a little underrated. Jason Brackens is, obviously we know his sister, his cousin, both his sisters, but,
Dad.
Great athletes.
Yeah.
His dad is a Hall of Famer. So yeah. I feel like he's on the rise.
So clearly Fairfield is one to look out for.
That's all you got? Who else?
I will say the Clifton Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't talked a lot about Clifton. There are only 3A D2 school in the area. All our other 3As are D1. I believe that's correct. Yeah, they've just kind of been playing solid football. And then another one I'll mention Chad mentioned, a team that was in the top 10 earlier in the year in Bremond. And those kind of teams really shouldn't fly under our radar. But at the same time, I think Bremond's a little bit like Fairfield in that they're on the fringe of our area, and kind of in that interesting place where we cover them and the Bryan College Station Eagle covers them. But another one that's in the top 10 is the Aquila Cougars, rolling along undefeated. Can they beat Abbott? I don't know, but they've got a kid who's a freshman who's tearing it up for them. I think it's TC Hennig is his name, and he's been making plays all year, but they've also got some veterans. And so, I like Aquila as a team that, can get in the playoffs and maybe do some damage. And we haven't really talked about them much, this year, but certainly having their best year in a while.
By the way, you mentioned Clifton. I wanted to point out for our viewers' sake that they play early on Friday, but it will be at a normal time.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, they play early.
Early
high school, the early Longhorns. That's correct.
Yeah, they play the early Longhorns. And yes. And aside from the dad joke there, if they win that game, which it looks like they should, then they play Toller next week, and a game that we should probably cover.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I am headed to Lubbock for that game that Chad referenced. We'll be getting up bright and early Saturday, so I'm going to help DJ out and write a couple of games, save her from writing some of those games on Saturday. So I'll be in the office or here at the house on Friday night. But Chad, where are you headed?
I will be at the big rivalry game, China Spring at La Vega.
Should be fun, always fun. We've been to a few of those. And DJ, you get
it's not always fun.
DJ will be at Conley Robinson. All right, we'll see y'all later. Peace out.